Hello, everybody. Welcome in live to not Cover 4 Live. That's a different show we do on a completely different day. This is Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Sanders. We have a lot of shows around here, and keeping them all together and keeping them straight for someone who's got limited mental faculties like myself, not always the easiest thing to do. But this is actually one of my favorite shows to do during the week. Go With The Flow. We talk about the big games coming up for the upcoming weekend, make our picks against the spread, and we invite you to play along there as well. Here's how it works. In a moment, you'll hear from the entirety of the Dog Nation panel: Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, myself. You hear from Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers. And over the course of that, as we share our thoughts on the games and the picks against the spread, a consensus will be formed, a chance to go with the flow for Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. We invite you to do the same thing as you're watching along. Do you want to go with the flow and join that consensus, or do you want to go against the grain and make your own pick there? Always a lot of fun to be able to do that. We got a very, very intriguing slate of games coming up, which we will tell you about. Before that, though, let's remind you of kind of where things stand here right now. Taking a look at the current season-long standings here, and you see a brand new leader there at the top. As Connor Riley takes the lead for the first time here this year, as he goes 38-20 on the season. Actually, 30-20. Excuse me, I was giving more credit than he deserved. 30-20 on the season after a 6-3 week last week. Mike Griffith winning week a week ago, but dropping down the standings now a game behind Connor at 29-21 after 5-4 week. I at 7-2 was the weekly winner for the second consecutive week, but still some ground to make up all the way around at 28-22 for the season. Dari also a winning week, and that right there with me at 28-22 on the campaign. Jeff Sintel got hot again last Saturday, 7-2, 27-23. So let me just say this, Dari Payro, before we move on to the picks for here for this week. The fact that all five of our pickers are above 500 on the season, the fact that everybody last week also had their own winning week there as well, I would say this show is making you money. Now, obviously, you love the idea of winning the competition, being at the top at the end, but what matters is that week-to-week grind and churning out a profit. And this show is providing one so far this season, which I think we all should feel pretty good about.
Yeah, no doubt. It's great to see everyone in the win column on the season. Hopefully that continues. And hopefully I start getting some of these big wins, small losses. I've been kind of just inching along each week. Texas crushed me. That was a big unit play. That was in all my parlays. That was a heartbreak to lose that one in the fashion they lost. But great games last week. They're absolutely phenomenal all over the day. Looking forward to this week as well.
Yeah, college football is certainly so much fun for all the reasons you just mentioned. The wild back and forth swings at the same time, right ahead of that Georgia-Auburn kickoff, with what Oklahoma and Texas were doing in the Texas State Fair, with what Arkansas and Ole Miss were doing there in Oxford. It was a wild Saturday. Now, I'll tell you this, then we'll jump into the action. I find this week's slate to be incredibly difficult. I think there are some very, very intriguing trends potentially upended. Also, some extracurricular thoughts you have to have about a couple of these games. I find this week's slate to be pretty tough, Dari. What do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. Although there's some locks in there. I'm now on the train of just everything against Vandy after last week. But there's some gimmies. There's some gimmies.
That might be a safe assumption, a little bit of an early preview there, spoiler alert, if you will, from Dari Payro. So we'll get to Vanderbilt and South Carolina later on. Let's start, though, with the home team here, the Georgia Bulldogs, back at home a week after beating Auburn and securing the number one ranking in both the Associated Press and Coaches Poll. They will get another big showdown, and what was supposed to be a little bit of a lackluster home schedule for Georgia has suddenly taken on the look of anything but that. ESPN College Game Day on hand once again, the big CBS 3:30 telecast, and an undefeated Kentucky Wildcats team on the other side, fresh off two marquee wins, if not necessarily, high-profile wins given the talent on the field this past Saturday, but marquee wins against an LSU and then Florida before that. For Kentucky, that as a pretty large underdog against the Gators and coming back as a small favorite last week, getting the win against LSU. They ride high at 6-0, but big underdogs on Saturday coming into Athens. According to BetUS, at minus 23.5 are the Georgia Bulldogs. So, Mike Griffith, let me begin with you. What do you think about Georgia here as the 23.5 point favorite against Kentucky on Saturday?
Yeah, Georgia's offense is really efficient, obviously. The offensive line looks like it's gotten some continuity. And, Kentucky just doesn't strike me as a program that really has the juice to score a lot of points on Georgia. So I'm going to take Georgia in this football game 30-10 make that 34-10 to cover that spread.
There you go. So Mike Griffith's off and running here. He likes the dogs. Jeff, what do you think about UGA-Kentucky?
Hold on a second. 7-2 and 7-2. Aren't those both equal in terms of winning weeks there, Brandon?
I guess. Yeah, I guess I should. The honest truth is I didn't realize you were 7-2 until I read it. So I apologize. I tied with you for the best week here this week.
I mean, you may be seeing the board well, man, but you're not seeing the standings well some weeks, man. I got you.
That is certainly fair to say.
In the interest of a fair and balanced show, we brought that up. Speaking of this week, fair and balanced, will Georgia's offense be fair and balanced? This is a big number for me, and I realize the gap between both schools here. I'm going to lay the points. I think Georgia will cover this spread, but if we had to assign a degree of confidence in this one is a moderate confidence that Georgia covers this spread. For some reason, I just feel like this is a big number.
The popular gift that says, I'm not going to lie, they had us in the first half. You sort of had me in the first half on that one. I thought you were going one way and you zagged back the other direction when it's all said and done. So, Connor, it's all dogs thus far. You want to join that party?
Yeah, BA, you spend a lot of time celebrating, currently being in third place. You're starting to sound a little bit like Dan Mullen here and being close, but not going over the top. So, switching it back here to Georgia, I want to pick Kentucky here. I have a lot of questions about this Georgia team this week. I think they're a good team, but I just can't pick against Georgia because this defense is so good. It's going to make things very difficult for Kentucky, who's missing its number 2 receiver in Josh Ole, and Kentucky's down 2 starting defensive linemen as well. I just think, well, yes, Georgia's very banged up as it is. I'm going to go with Georgia here to cover the 24 or the 23.5 points. I don't feel great about it. It's a big number, but I also think this Arkansas team is better than Kentucky, and Georgia pretty thoroughly handled Arkansas.
Well, 91% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers agree with you, Connor, and both Jeff and Mike there as well. And I may surprise you a little bit on this, but I'm going to take Kentucky plus the points on Saturday, and I'll tell you why. And part of this is an emotional pick for me because as a fan of this team that wants to win games, there's one thought going into Saturday that gives me great pause, great concern. And it's really got very little to do with Kentucky. The one area in Kirby Smart's resume as a head coach of Georgia where they have consistently shown up deficient is in that final game before a bye week. This has not been an area in which Georgia has been strong in the Smart era. You can go back and look at it since 2016. Georgia's actually 0-6 in those spots. I should say 0-5 in those spots going into a bye week. It's actually 0-6 because there were 2 in 2019. Think about the outright loss to Vanderbilt in 2016, closer than it should have been versus Missouri in 2017. The 20-point loss to LSU in 2018. There were 2 bye weeks in 2019. The Notre Dame game was not a cover for Georgia. And then the 21-0 game against Kentucky was also not a cover. Last season, the Kentucky spot on the road, once again, Georgia wins but doesn't cover. 0-6 with 2 outright losses. That is UGA in these games prior to buys in the Kirby Smart era. Now, what does that mean? Are these things in any way connected? We can't know that for sure, but it's a number that sticks out to me. Plus, 23.5 just seems like an awful lot. I mean, think about this out loud for a moment. Let's say Georgia won the game 24-3 on Saturday. It's a pretty dominant win. It feels like something fairly close to what Georgia might be able to do, and that would not be enough to earn the cover here in this spot. So for me, while I don't think Georgia's really threatened to win the game, sleepy on that final game before a bye week, we've seen Georgia there before. Dari, that's enough to convince me to take Kentucky plus the points right here, but the flow is easily on the side of UGA. You want to go with the flow and take the Georgia Bulldogs.
I can't. I'm with you. This kind of seems like a big number for me. I mean, even like a 30-7 score doesn't cover. And I think that's where this game kind of lands, somewhere around there. Kentucky kind of hangs around in games. They win with defense and getting turnovers. As long as Georgia doesn't have a whole bunch of those in this game, they should easily cruise to victory. I think Kirby Smart's going to run the ball a lot in this game. I think there's going to be a lot of clock control. I think it's just going to be one of those slow moving games. Unless Georgia's defense starts scoring points and putting it on the board, then they probably cover this number. I think it's just going to be a hair underneath that. So I'll take the points in Kentucky.
We'll turn our attention back to UGA Arkansas before the game is done. I should say UGA, and I'm having a great guess. I've had the wrong show, the wrong game, and everything else. So lots of errors for me this far. We'll turn our attention back to Georgia Kentucky before this show is done. But for now, I'll look at the rest of the SEC right now, including Auburn taking a trip to Arkansas on Saturday, with the Hogs sitting at a 3.5-point favorite. Back in the friendly confines again after a wild game in Oxford against Ole Miss last Saturday that featured a lot of chatter after the game, both in terms of Sam Pittman accusing Ole Miss of faking injuries, Ole Miss flaunting their victory against Arkansas in every way imaginable. Of course, Georgia fans got their fill of Auburn a week ago, which fought hard for a while, but ultimately lost and failed to cover in that game against the Georgia Bulldogs last Saturday, continuing what has been a bit of an up and down season for Auburn all the way around here. Hogs are at home. They're given 3.5. Mike, what do you think about Auburn and Arkansas?
Yes, this is one of those toss-up games. I think both teams coming off a negative week. Auburn with a home loss, Arkansas with a road loss. Ole Miss was faking injuries. There's videos of Lane Kiffin telling guys to go down on the field. That's not speculation. That's truth. This is a revenge game, though, for Arkansas. Remember the officiating last year kind of cost the Hogs on the road. I like Arkansas to win this game. I'm really, really torn on that number. And even though Arkansas has had a really tough road and looks like a beat-up team to me, I still think they're a better team. So I'm going to take Arkansas to win this 31-27 and cover the spread.
I think the revenge factor does matter here, as Mike said, much the same way it played to Ole Miss's advantage last week after Matt Corral thrown a lot of his interceptions against Arkansas the previous year. Arkansas was clearly jobbed against Auburn a week ago. You know that will be on their mind. Jeff, Mike's on the side of the Hogs. What do you think?
I think I got to go Hogs here, too. I like the way KJ Jefferson played last week. I think he had 6 total touchdowns, 3 through the air, 3 on the ground. It looked like he had all day in the pocket compared to the time he had against Georgia. I think the tipping point for me was something that's I just like where Arkansas is at. I like that. I think that they have more pieces. I think Bo Nix will probably have 5 touchdowns himself in a type of game like this today, but I like the way KJ Jefferson is playing. I think KJ Jefferson has more help on the line. He has more weapons around him. And a small, somewhat trivial fact is that the Arkansas basketball coach has purchased 1,000 breakfast burritos for the Razorback student sections to get them loud and proud on Saturday. And to me, that's certainly worth 4.5 points of cover here. 1,000 breakfast burritos equals 4.5 points of cover. I like Arkansas. I like them to cover spread at home.
So a lot of Arkansas thus far. Connor, what do you think?
I really want to zag here and take Auburn, just because whoever designed this schedule this year clearly has a vendetta against Arkansas. I don't know if they lost a lot of money betting against them last year or what, but Texas A&M in Dallas, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, and then you come home for your 4th straight SEC game against an Auburn team that played okay last week against Georgia. I really want to pick Auburn here, but I'm not going against Sam Pittman. I love what he has done with the program. I love the revenge factor in this game, and I think they're going to find a way to win and win comfortably, covering that number of 3.5. So going maybe against my better judgment here, I'm riding with the Hogs.
So 64% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, they do agree. They join in Arkansas there as well. That number a little lower than it has been. Maybe some folks kind of moving away from the Razorbacks here a bit. But if you want to quantify what I think a lot of our panel is saying right now, Arkansas, even after losing last week, it is a game in which the Razorbacks did cover the spread. They're actually 5-1 against the number thus far this year. Auburn's already failed to cover 3 times. So if you're looking for performance against expectation, Arkansas has been doing that in a way that Auburn has not been able to do thus far this season. And when you're trying to figure out who regroups best over the course of what happened last week, and now for Arkansas, maybe a double regroup on that, thinking about 2 weeks ago against Georgia, I still sort of trust Sam Pittman in this spot because he has been the guy that's been allowing this Razorbacks team to exceed expectations for the most part all season long anyway. So it's a clean sweep for me. I learned something about Auburn last week, but not enough to change my mind here. I do like Arkansas, and Daria, as I said, that's everybody on the side of the Razorbacks. You want to join the flow and take Sam Pittman and the Hogs.
I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to take the Hogs at home. They're actually, Pittman's done a really good job of getting these teams ready to compete at home. So I like how they play at home. The 3.5, I'm kind of with Mike on that. It's kind of got me eyeballing that. I think this game is going to be really close. I feel way more comfortable at 2.5, but I'm going to take Arkansas at home. I think it's going to be a close game, though.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. By the way, that's Dari Payro from RS Andrews. And obviously we get ready to enjoy a great football weekend. You're thinking about the same thing there at your home. One of the things that can ruin that football weekend, if something were to go wrong at home, those systems in your house, the plumbing system, the electrical systems, the things that you depend on to kind of keep it all flowing, the air conditioning flowing out of your vents, the water flowing out of your pipes. RS Andrews does all of that for us around Dog Nation. They're the one we turn to for our air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They're the one we invite you to turn to there as well. So check out RS Andrews online at rsandrews.com, and they'll show up on time. They'll do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. That is part of the guarantee that RS Andrews has for all of you. Let's head to Death Valley in Baton Rouge now as LSU hosts Florida as a 10.5-point underdog. You do not see LSU this big of an underdog at home very much, but you understand why that is. LSU last Saturday lost at Kentucky. This is a program that seems to be reeling, and it seems almost unimaginable that LSU coach Ed Orgeron's days are anything other than numbered, with pieces being written all over the internet about who his likely replacement will eventually be as Tigers head coach. This does not appear to be a good spot for the Tigers, for Florida. And the other side of that, easy last Saturday against Vanderbilt after their own disappointment at Kentucky 2 weeks prior to that. So they look to try to get back to their winning ways in a series that has turned into a lot more of a rivalry in recent years than maybe it would have been in the past when these were just two big teams that played each other. Now they seem to have a lot of disdain for each other, which makes the game fun. Florida on the road, 10.5-point favorite. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they lost Eli Ricks, their other starting corner. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of drums beating in Baton Rouge. Ed Orgeron today on the SEC teleconference talking about how he handled things at Ole Miss, right? I mean, thank you, Dr. Freud. This is it's not a good situation. Revenge factor for the Gators. I think Florida wins this game and wins easily. I got Florida covering the spread.
Mike mentions the revenge factor here there as well. Obviously, we all remember the dramatic win a year ago for LSU as more than a 3-touchdown underdog in Gainesville and the throne shoe and everything that went along with that. So Mike's heavy on Florida here. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Mike covered it well. I think there is a groundswell of negative juju regarding LSU, especially with their players. I still think maybe they have a more talented roster than Florida. But to sum up my thoughts nicely, I would say I like Florida to cover this spread by more than a shoelace. Give me the Gators, lay the points.
Boy, Connor, been a lot of agreement among our riders here, yourself included. Are you going to join the fray with LSU here as well?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, with Florida as well?
Absolutely. This LSU team has been dead in the water, really since the second half of that Auburn game. This team has not played well, and to just come out and pummeled last week against Kentucky. Now they're going to face a motivated Florida team after what happened last year, how LSU pretty much ruined their season. I don't see how LSU gets the ship righted here. This is a motivated Florida team that knows that, hey, if we take care of some things in the second half of the season, we can still have a strong finish to the year. And I mean, Ed Orgeron, the days are ticking down. That Kentucky performance was dreadful. Losing in the manner that they did against Auburn is as well. And I think this game could get real nasty and some boo birds coming out real early in that game if Florida jumps out to a quick and early lead there.
Also very likely.
Florida and
sorry to cut you off. Also very likely to have a lot of empty seats. It's amazing how many empty seats there have been in Death Valley thus far this year. That is certainly a possibility there as well. Now, Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers are on the side of LSU because they never take Florida. 59% in this particular case do like LSU here. And Mike mentioned something that's a pretty key factor for me. That's the absence of Eli Ricks due to injury. And it's not that Ricks is a game changer, but when you say, okay, it's Ricks and it's Derek Stingley and it's Keyshawn Butte and it's all the guys that are piling up there, on the one hand, maybe this is just bad injury luck. Certainly teams have that from time to time. On the other hand, for an LSU team that has seemed to deal with a pretty high, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm just going to, a pretty high quit factor in the last couple of years where it becomes easier just to not play as opposed to play. You start to wonder, is the preponderance of these injuries, is it evidence of an LSU team that no longer feels like it has anything to play for, and a team that's shown more than once they're not willing to really show up and play very hard for Ed Orgeron? There's a bad culture there. And I can't know if this is true or not, but this is what gambling is all about. Sometimes you have to make your best bet. And Dari, just to put it in simple terms, I'm going to bet here on LSU quitting because I would never give 10.5 points to LSU at home. Otherwise, my assumption is they've quit on the season, and that's shown again against Florida on Saturday. So I'll take Florida minus the 10.5 at LSU. That's an unforeseeable pick for me if you want to go back a couple of months ago, but the current results, I think, dictate that's what you must do. If you got to pick the game, it's Florida or nothing. You want to go with the flow and take the Gators.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the flow. I'm kind of with you and everyone else on this. I think they've kind of mailed it in as far as the team. Really kind of lost their focus on what they're playing for. I think Florida's just going to pound the rock on them, probably rush for 250 yards. I think they easily cover the number.
All right, so that is that. How about the rest of the SEC slate here for a moment? Let's take a look at a Texas A&M team now riding as high as one can after just an unbelievably emotional scene in College Station last week as Texas A&M got that big SEC win that program has craved against the biggest of them all, Alabama, last Saturday. Now having to go on the road to a Missouri team that, let's be honest, has not probably been as good this season as I thought that it would be. They are getting 9 here in Como, though. Can A&M stay hot on the road as a 9-point favorite in SEC play? Mike Griffith, will turn our attention back to you.
Yeah, it seems like forever ago that A&M only scored 10 points on Colorado, but they scored 41 on Alabama. So I think that's more of an indictment on Alabama's defense than anything. I like the way A&M's running the football now. And, I think the run game travels can take a team out. Missouri does not have much going for it. I just don't see Missouri being able to score enough points. So I'm going to take Texas A&M 24-10. Expect Connor to keep picking the same games as me because that's how he picks so that he can win the picks every week.
All right, so that is Mike Griffith's pick there. He's got A&M minus the points. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of sit here in between these two, this tennis match they have all season long, jockeying back and forth. I really like where Texas A&M is at. See right here, folks, this is a visual representation of my Zach Calzada stock. This is where it was last week. This is where it is this week. It's kind of going to be like my picks this week. I like A&M. They'll have a letdown, but they're not going to fall all the way down to the level of the football program in Como this week. I look for A&M to cover.
So a lot of A&M here thus far. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, if A&M were playing a decent team this week, I would absolutely pick against them. But this Missouri team has shown me nothing to inspire confidence. So give me Texas A&M. I'll ride with Mike here once again and take the Aggies minus 9.5 on the road.
Yeah, I think Connor brings a pretty good point. The spot here matters. Key opportunity for a letdown, but does it happen against Missouri? Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers don't think so either. 74% do like Texas A&M, feeling pretty good about that win last week. And, I tried to examine what I thought was the likelihood that you might get the letdown here from Texas A&M. The truth is that what you saw last Saturday against Alabama is a little more in keeping with what A&M has been. If you want to go back and look at a stretch of 20 games under Jimbo Fisher, 15-5 straight up in those games, 11-9 against the spread, no problem there. So the outlier for A&M as of late has been those early season struggles. A lot of that on the back of an injured starting quarterback. And, clearly there were, offensive deficiency or at least in Denver against Colorado. And obviously what happened in Jerry World against Arkansas. But for the most part, those are the outliers for A&M. It's been a team that's been pretty strong straight up and at least better than 500 against the spread as of late. So you're not asking for them to play above their recent level at Missouri. And I just got a little bit of a hunch that something's just not quite with Missouri right now. Relative expectations, Missouri's been, to me, one of the most disappointing teams in the SEC thus far this year. So even at home as an underdog here, I can't back them, can't support them. I'll take Texas A&M minus the 9. Sorry, this feels a little bit like a square play on the list of games that I wanted to really wrestle with. This was definitely one that I had circled, but sometimes the square play may be the winning play. And in this particular case, that's what I'm hoping A&M turns out to be. You want to go with the flow and take the clean sweep with the Aggies here.
Yeah, another clean sweep here. I'm going to go with the flow. I like the Aggies. They got way more talent. I think that win kind of sparks them to try to get some momentum, try to close out this year. Missouri is just not good at all. I mean, they're just here we'll use a graph, just a little bit better than Vandy. I mean, that's what they're playing with, that kind of effort right now.
And I expected so much more from them. I really did. I'm actually pretty disappointed that they haven't shown more life this season than they have, whether it be, not finding a way to cover some games they lost or just flat out losing games like the one at Boston College that they lost. Pretty disappointing all the way around. But we'll obviously, keep that in mind as we roll through. Time to pick our next game here now there as well. And obviously, hold on one second. There we go. Time to pick our next game there now. And we head to another Columbia, this time Columbia, South Carolina, where the Gamecocks get ready to host Vanderbilt. They got the win 2 weeks ago against UConn. Didn't cover, but they got the win. Other than that, they have just been bludgeoned week after week after week. It was Florida's turn last week. Is South Carolina good enough to do that this week? The spread here is 18.5 for the Gamecocks against Vanderbilt. Mike, what do you think of Shane Beamer looking to get an SEC win here?
Yeah, I'd pick anybody against Vanderbilt. I'm with Dari on that. That program they're just pathetic. Even though you want to, ride the house, South Carolina wants to get an impressive win, wants to create some energy. Unlike Kirby, they're going to keep throwing the ball in the fourth quarter and keep the fans plugged in and try to generate some excitement. So I'm going to go with Carolina to win this game by 20, cover the spread.
All right, so Mike likes South Carolina there. Jeff, what do you think?
You're muted,
Jeff.
Jeff.
You're muted. Jeff, you're muted.
I think this line is 18.5 points. I think anybody on this panel that needs more than 18.5 seconds to dissect this game is wasting everyone's time. I would pick Carolina if they were laying 30 points. I like Carolina to cover this 18.5.
All right, Connor, it's a lot of Gamecocks here thus far. Are you going to be in that mess as well?
Of course. I started. Don't shake your head there, Mike. I was the one that started. I never picked Vanderbilt. I was against them when they played UConn. And, of course, UConn kept that game close. It was against them last week against Florida. And Florida made it interesting, but ultimately covered there. So I am taking South Carolina here.
So a lot of South Carolina Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree. 96% take the Gamecocks. Look, I'm going to say this. There is a better case for Vanderbilt here than you think. South Carolina is just 3-3 against the spread here this year. Failed to cover against Kentucky. I'm sorry. They're actually 4-2 against the spread. So failed to cover last week. Failed to cover against Kentucky. Other than that, they found the spread against Georgia. They covered in a win against East Carolina. They covered week 1 against Eastern Illinois. Nobody plays awful each and every week. I mean, it just doesn't happen. Nobody plays awful each and every week.
Vandy does.
Don't overthink this, BA.
UConn's pretty bad too.
They're good. Their good is awful. If they played well, they would still be awful.
I don't feel great. I'm going to take South Carolina, but I'm telling you right now, I don't feel great about this. I'm telling you right now, ain't nobody a sure thing. On the top end, the bottom end, nobody's a sure thing. But Gamecocks have been 4-2 against the spread. That's enough for me to take them on Saturday. So I'll take South Carolina, but I don't feel that great about it. So Dari, it's another clean sweep. And I'm telling you right now, I do not like all of us being on the same side of these games. And I don't care a rip about the season long standing. I'm just telling you, 6 people can't be this right about this many games.
I can't. I'm taking it. I'm taking Vandy to quit playing football. South Carolina is going to cover this pretty easily. It's just automatic. Book it.
Y'all make me nervous. I'm just telling you right now, this many people cannot be right about this many games. That makes me very, very nervous. How about this game next? Who said? Yeah, go ahead.
Nothing. It's just, South Carolina is just going to try to run up the score. It's that easy. Vandy almost covered that game against Florida. So I'll give them, they were driving late in the game. They were in Florida's territory. I thought they would get a late touchdown to cover. It almost played out like that. The fact that they didn't get it done has kind of just ended my Vanderbilt experiment.
Mississippi State is at home. They're getting 17 points against Alabama. We all know what happened for Alabama last week. Mike, what do you think about now going back on the road again here and trying to do it in Starkville? Probably the closest two SEC opponents may be Tuscaloosa and Starkville, I believe. So what do you make about Alabama there in that spot?
Yeah, this is where we get to start to disagree. I'm going to take Mississippi State in the points. Alabama to me has been susceptible. Florida should have beat them. I said it at the time. Dan Mullen blew that game. They had a home crowd. They had Bama on the ropes. They weren't as prepared coming out. I like Mike Leach. I mean, Mike Leach, they beat Texas A&M, right? I'm going to go with Mississippi State to cover. I'm going to take Alabama to win, but my pick is Mississippi State to cover.
Jeff, what do you think here? Mississippi State and Alabama.
Mike, that was important clarification. I wanted to make sure you let us know that you were picking Alabama to win, but not cover. That's bold, Cotton. I'm going to go Alabama, a team that I think will continue to get better and better each and every week. I think this has probably been one of the most distasteful teams for Saban up to this point because the sense of entitlement has crept in. I think that was exactly the opposite of rat poison. I'm going to call it rat filet mignon for another week. I think Alabama's going to win this game handily, and this is going to be Mississippi State dressing up early for Halloween as the woodshed.
Connor, what do you think? Split decision among our scribes.
I was ready to pick Mississippi State, but I'm gonna go back to the Dari payroll rule here, and I'm gonna disagree with Mike here just so we can satisfy him, so he doesn't think I'm copying all of his picks, because I am a game ahead of Mike, and if I were copying all of his picks, we'd be tied. So I'll take Alabama here minus 17. I don't think that Mississippi State's offense is going to present the same physical challenges that Texas A&M did a week ago, and so because of that, give me Alabama here.
So 74% of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers are on the side of Alabama here, there as well. And before the show began, when you're kind of looking at these early numbers during the week, this is also one that I kind of wrestle with, because while on the one hand, I think of Mississippi State's a pretty bad football team, and on the other hand, Alabama's, clearly Alabama's still a playoff contender. Alabama has not been good in either of its two true road games this season. Failed to cover at Florida, obviously lost the game outright as a very big favorite. Texas A&M there last week. I am very, very tempted to, whether it be via backdoor means or whatever else, I assume that Mississippi State keeps it just under the number, but I also don't want to be too cute either. So I'm going to hem and I'm going to haw. I'm ultimately going to take Alabama. But once again, as I said on the last game, I think there's actually a fairly compelling case for an Alabama team that's still not quite figured it out right now to be a little sloppy on the road, where they've been twice already this season. I think there's a little bit of a case for Mississippi State here, plus the 17 if you've got to pick the game. But if I want to be wrong, I want to be wrong on the side of Alabama. So let me just do that instead. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide? Because that's where it is. But boy, I don't feel great about that either.
Yeah, I'm rolling with Bama. You gotta go along with them throughout the season. Their problem has been on defense. I mean, that's the thing that's really hurting this team. That's different with the other Saban Alabama teams over the years. But one thing to note, you can go back and look at the numbers. The games after an Alabama loss, he absolutely destroys the next opponent. You go look at him. It's like 34-0, 38-3. You can't find anything close. And this goes all the way back. He hasn't had back-to-back regular season losses since 2007. That actually happened to be against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's had the extra week off to prepare for this, so I think they're probably going to do some stuff in this game. But I like Alabama at home to really kind of jumpstart this team again.
So that will certainly be a very interesting game to watch. Next game here in the SEC sees Ole Miss going to Tennessee, one of the most fun games of the week because of how both these offenses play. We saw that from Ole Miss last Saturday against Arkansas. We've seen that from Tennessee a lot this season, really pasting South Carolina last week, Missouri the week before that, finding their form in Josh Heupel's first year here and getting a chance with a checkerboard crowd, the orange and white sections all lined up there, getting a chance to host Ole Miss here in this spot. Mike, what do you think about the Vols getting 3 at home against Ole Miss?
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss's offense is really good. Although they were shut out for a half by Alabama, it's worth noting. I'm just going off the emotional high factor. When you win a game like Ole Miss did, I just think it's hard to get up. I think the coach will be jacked up. I just don't know if the players, can match the enthusiasm of pulling out a last-second win like they did. For Tennessee, it was somewhat anticlimactic against South Carolina. Giant first quarter lead, a lot of confidence, first sellout there in 4 years. Got to go with the hot team. Got to take Tennessee.
What do you think, Jeff? 3's the number.
Yeah, it's a close one, Brandon. I think this is the one that really skewers a lot of the logic thoughts on this week's pick. I think Ole Miss is going to win the game, but I think Tennessee will cover at home. Mike's echoing a lot of the logical data points from this game. I think there is obviously the off the field interesting of Kiffin returns to not Rocky Top and Knoxville to consider here. I'm just like the football team that's going to play at home, that's going to win. It's already winning a lot of its games with offensive line play and run game. That's Tennessee. I don't like Tennessee to win so much, but I do like that 3 points. So give me Tennessee in this one.
What do you think? It's an interesting pick to say that you're going to take the 3, but it still expect a loss, because that's an interesting way to look at this. Connor, what do you think?
So Jeff has either a 2-point Ole Miss win or a 1-point Ole Miss win.
That's quite a middle. That's quite a middle.
What are we doing there, Jeff? I'll zag here. I'll take Ole Miss. Yes, Tennessee's offense has looked impressive in the last 2 weeks, and Ole Miss's defense stinks. That's kind of what you get when you have DJ Durkin running the unit. But I'm not really impressed with the teams that Tennessee had beaten. They beat an okay South Carolina team, and then they beat a Missouri team that we spent much of the earlier part of this podcast dogging. So give me Ole Miss here. They've played better competition, and I'll take that, and create a little separation for myself between myself and Mr. Griffith there. So
66% of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers also on the side of Ole Miss here in this spot. This is actually one of the games that I like of the entirety of the board this week. I probably like this game as much as any of them from my own pick on this. And I do like Tennessee plus the 3. Normally, I don't care about trends that predate a current coach, but this is one that does matter to me. We don't see Ole Miss in this spot very much. They've only been a road favorite 7 times going back to the start of the 2016 season. So this is not a team that's favored very much on the road. And they were 1-1 in this spot last year under Lane Kiffin in that situation, road favorite. But over the course of their last 7 times as a road favorite, they're just 1-6 against the spread. The point here is that Ole Miss is not the kind of team that goes on the road as a favorite and handles its business. And I think that's the program that Lane Kiffin inherited. And for now, that's still the program that he coaches. I just don't think you can trust the Rebels in a spot like this. I still don't think that Tennessee's very good. They were one of my worst teams in the SEC preseason. I didn't think I'd take them in a game all year. But in this particular spot, just knowing that Ole Miss has a lot asked of it in this particular case, I don't like Ole Miss as a road favorite. That's an automatic pass for me. So I'll be on the side of the balls here. And what I do think will be a loud and energetic Neyland Stadium. So, Dari, with that said, you want to go with the flow and take Tennessee?
No, I'm actually going to take Ole Miss. I think they just got too much firepower right now. They're looking really good. I think it's just too much for Tennessee. The over-under in this game is 82, which is absolutely bananas.
That's wild.
So I think this will be another, just like last week against Arkansas, kind of ping-pong, back-and-forth type game, lots of scoring. But I think Ole Miss is going to do enough just to eke out that win and cover.
We'll turn to the SEC once again for Georgia and Kentucky. Our thoughts on the point total in that one in just a moment. Before that, though, one game this week outside the SEC that includes top 25 competition. It is Texas back in Austin hosting undefeated Oklahoma State. Of course, for the Longhorns, one of the most just absolutely deflating losses of the season that anyone has suffered. Last week in the Red River Shootout, State Fair of Texas, Caleb Williams inserted it for the Sooners, leading them on the comeback trail, getting the win there, also earning the cover. And now Texas has to pick up the pieces in Steve Sarkisian's first year, as I said before, getting a chance to now host an undefeated Oklahoma State team. The number here in this spot is Texas as a 5.5-point favorite. Mike, taking a look at Texas hosting Oklahoma State, which direction you want to go on that 5.5?
Yeah, I'm going to take Texas at home to cover.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, we need to keep it real on this one right here. I don't think Oklahoma State's played anybody. I see that schedule. I see a lot of narrow wins against maybe less than stellar opponents. The other thing I'm looking at here is I don't trust a Gundy team when they're not throwing the ball well, which is what this team is not doing here. I like Texas in this matchup. I like them to cover.
Connor, what do you think? What a Longhorns so far?
Horns up. Dari and I were done in late last week on just an all-time bad cover. Texas, all they had to do was just play for the field goal there and give up a rushing touchdown. Just a sickening result there. So I like Texas here to bounce back. I do think they're the better team here.
62% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers on the other side on this. They're going to go Oklahoma State here. I'm going to tell you right now, I love Texas in this spot. 5.5, I think, is very interesting. Let me just make a quick point here, and then I'll cede the floor to Dari. I think a lot of folks have a tendency to think the top 25 doesn't matter very much. But from a gambling standpoint, the top 25 remains a very important indicator of the way in which lines are likely to move. When you see an unranked team favored against a ranked team, that is usually a very important opportunity for you to jump on the favorite there, because clearly the gamblers know something the public is kind of going the other way on. Same thing as well in a ranked versus ranked matchup. These are two teams that are on TV a lot. The favorite in a ranked versus ranked matchup is typically going to have a better than 50% winning percentage on that. When it's the lower ranked team who's also a relatively sizable favorite, big enough that Texas would also be a favorite in a neutral field, that's all you need to know. So you've got that going for you. You've got Texas coming off the awful loss to Oklahoma, yet still considered the decisive favorite in this game against Oklahoma State. I don't think you can bet Texas hard enough here in this spot. It's not a surprise to me that, with the exception of our audience, everybody else on the side of Texas, it is the right side here in this spot. Dari, I think the Longhorns are free money. You want to go with the flow and take Texas?
No, I'm going to take the points here. Texas, they're going to have a little hangover from last week. They just gave up way too much offense to the Sooners. I mean, that's the biggest problem for Texas right now, is their defense is awful. I think they're going to give up a ton of offense for the Cowboys this week. I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. Probably more interested in the over in this game. But I do think Texas wins the game at home, but they're not going to cover the 5.5.
Quick reminder to all of you, if your water heater goes out, in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace it for you the same day. That's why you need to reach out to my friends at R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com and find out all the great work they can do for you. Plus, air conditioning still working overdrive. I know it's been hot last few days near my house. I have to have my AC on to really be able to sleep good. So you can get your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs, get some more life out of that unit with that mega tune-up from our friends at R.S. Andrews. Once again, rsandrews.com, the website to go to for all of that. All right, back to Georgia and Kentucky. The over-under is 44.5. Georgia's become a little bit more of a safe underplay the last couple of weeks, which is a little bit more in keeping with what UGA has been in recent seasons under Kirby Smart. Mike, what do you think? 44.5 here on the over-under.
Georgia would have gone over if Podlensky doesn't miss a field goal, or if Kirby gets that call to Cook, I believe, inside the one. So it's not as much of a stretch as you think. I think Auburn, though, has more offense, is more dynamic than Kentucky. I think Bo Nix is better than this Kentucky quarterback. Kentucky's only got one good receiver. I'm not sure Auburn had one good receiver. Running back's a wash. Auburn was at home. Kentucky's on the road. I'm going to go with the under in this game. Even though I'd like to go over, even though I think we're due for an over. What'd you say the over-under was, BA?
44.5. 44.5.
Yeah, I got it. I'm gonna stick with the under.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one of those that kind of stretches some boundaries for me. I think this is the week Georgia puts a lot of things together. I think maybe they get special teams, they get a defensive touchdown. I think maybe Kentucky gets another 7 to 10, like Auburn scraped up as well. Give me the over on this one.
Connor's getting settled back into his chair, so I'll say that Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, the tune of 71% do like the under here. So we've got under, over, under. Connor, what do you think?
The dangerous game here, but I'm going to go with the under here. I think Georgia still covers, but I just don't see this Kentucky team scoring enough points.
Oh, he's giving you the Will Levis spin. Oh my gosh, he did the Will Levis thing. That's so disgusting. How much do you want to spit that out right now? How much do you want to spit that out? Don't choke. Oh gosh, this is dangerous. We may have to pull him off the camera there. All right, we'll let him figure that out. I want to make sure he did it. That is amazing. That is amazing. Connor pulled off the Will Levis here on the show. I am very, very impressed with that. That was worth waiting for right there. Good. How did that taste, by the way?
Honestly, it was the texture of the banana that got me more than the peel itself. Like the peel itself doesn't taste all that good, but I can get past that. But it's best when it's like semi past ripe. so you can bite into it. And obviously that's, when the banana might lose some of its consistency. So that was the thing that I probably struggled with more than anything.
For those of you who don't know,
have you been practicing this? Have you
no, that's
done
the first
some
time I've ever
research
done
on it to make sure it's like, how long you let it sit? How many bananas have you gone through prior to this today?
It's the first time I've ever done it this way.
So for a moment there, it looked like you might be choking. Were you at any point in time concerned that you were going to have a hard time?
I tried to swallow a little too quickly there, but I was able to power through it.
Oh, boy, that is really tough. I can't really follow that up, so I'll just make my point here pretty quick. Mike mentioned a moment ago all the ways in which the Georgia-Auburn game could have gone over last week. It's important to note, though, that 2 weeks before that against Arkansas, Georgia got the benefit of a special teams touchdown. 64% of games that include a special team score go over, yet including a special team score against Arkansas, Georgia came nowhere close to exceeding that point total. I think that we're back to unders being a pretty safe play for Georgia right now. So I'm fine with the under of 44.5 here in this spot, especially given the pre-bye week struggles for Georgia that I've talked about before. So I'll take under there. I honestly have no idea where the flow is after the physical feat from Connor a moment ago. So I'm just going to simply ask you, which side do you want to be on here?
I'm going to go with the under. I think this is a game that Kirby knows, no mistakes, and you're probably going to win because your defense is just that much better, and they don't have a lot of offensive firepower. So I think it's a lot of handing the ball off, a lot of running the ball, a lot of controlling the clock and stuff like that. And it just feels like an under type game.
No, I think you're right all the way around there on that. And to all of you who've been making your picks along with us during the show, we certainly appreciate that. Also, big thanks to our friends at BetUS for providing the point spread data. Check out betus.com, promo code DN125 for 125% sign-up bonus on your initial deposit. Best of luck with your picks here this week. Enjoy the college football action as we roll into the official second half of the regular season and the unofficial end of Georgia's first half, with the bye week coming the Saturday after this. And we'll, of course, see you again here next week at the same time for Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Talk to you soon, everybody.